Hello, I am Simulator Dirk, and welcome back to Trainz. We are again on the Donnybrook map, and this time I found an XPT, and not any XPT, an Australian XPT obviously, but this is the colour scheme that they first came out in the early 1980s. So we're at Donnybrook, we're on a siding, so we're just going to have to drive forward and then come back. So let's do that. So we discovered Donnybrook at the end of the last episode. So this is a natural place to begin this episode. So we just want to go behind the signal. We're going to have to stop at that signal. So we've cleared this, had the signal cleared by changing the points. So there's our train coming out of the siding. We want to make sure that the whole train is behind the signal, then we can go back to the platform. Alright, so we've stopped the train. We'll get out of that train. So we've changed ends And they've given us a signal to go back to the platform. Oops. So today, pardon me, it's almost 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Oh, hang on. Stop. Now, because it gave us a clear signal. Oh, pardon me. Because it gave us a clear signal, I was under the assumption, and you know what it assumed does, that we actually had the road onto the platform. So we'll go back behind the signal. Now, in a real train situation, of course, okay, I've changed the points. So we're setting this up as a test run of the XPT. So once I downloaded it from the download station, which is a part of Trainz, I was able to put it onto the tracks in not even 5 minutes because I downloaded the entire train as one consist. Oh, look at the traffic. So we're coming onto Donnybrook platform now. All right, so we've stopped there. Well, we've only just fit. Alright, so somehow we managed to turn the headlights on. I don't know how we managed to do that, but we did. Alright. Now the cab obviously looks like it's been based on a HST, a high-speed train. We'll get to that. It's time to go. Bit of horn. And let's go. .40 km/h speed limit. There's some horses over there crossing the crossing. So there's the people trial trip. This is a test trip. Green signal to go to the next section. We'll power up a bit. Now some models you have a lot of control over with things that you can do. Other ones not so much. So we'll go a bit faster now. So for anyone who's not aware, possibly not from Australia, this is the XPT, otherwise known as the Express Passenger Train, Express spelt with an X. It was introduced in the early 1980s to replace the variety of locomotive haul trains and also diesel rail motors that were around providing service in New South Wales. Although it did take quite some time for those services to be replaced. A lot of services around about the same time were replaced with buses connecting places to XPT interchanges. It's based on the design of the British high-speed train, however it has been modified for Australian conditions. Noticing that Australian tracks aren't to the British standard, and also that the environments are very, very different that these trains are expected to operate in. They were also very controversial at the time as well, because the railways wanted to change it to single driver operations, only having one driver in the cab, and with a range of onboard staff, and the only other person on board with any sort of safe working qualifications would have been the passenger services supervisor, who would have been previously acting as the role of the guard on other trains. So there were quite a few industrial disputes going on at the time in relation to that, and also taking brake vans off freight trains. So the early 80s were a very turbulent period industrially for the railways. So where the track permits, oh, it's only a 70 zone here. So where the track permits, maximum speed of the XPT in service is 160 kilometres an hour, or 100 miles an hour. But in theory, a lot of places that speed is just not possible. So these trains came out around about the same time as the 81 class diesel electric locomotive and the 86 class electric locomotive. And so it was the design of the livery, the so-called candy colour scheme, was very much a deliberate choice to modernise the look of the fleet. And then eventually they also started repainting other locos as well, to move away from the brown era of the 1970s. So the XPTs were originally just running within New South Wales, and so they were running from places from Sydney out to Dubbo out west, down to Albury and Canberra in the south, and to the north they were also running to Armidale, and they were also running to the north coast. And as services went on, and as time went on, services increased from Sydney as more trains got delivered. So eventually they would run interstate, running into Queensland to Brisbane and also to Melbourne in Victoria. And at that time a sleeping carriage was added. There were some changes made to the routes. The Explorers, a self-propelled diesel railcar set, were introduced in the early 1990s, and so some routes became Explorer routes. Explorer again, spelt with an X. Explorer routes rather than an XPT route. The route to Canberra is one example, and the Armidale and Moree route became an Explorer route compared to being an XPT route. So there was a lot of improvement in these trains compared to the loco haul passenger trains that they replaced. With a power car at either end, it was a lot easier operationally. Comfort levels were certainly improved over time compared to the loco hauled, and the speeds. The XPTs could go at higher speeds in some places compared to the loco hauled trains they replaced. Introduced in the early 1980s, 1982, 83 from memory. They're still in service in 2025. Their replacements have just started to arrive into Australia from Spain. Testing really hasn't begun on those yet. So the XPT is actually going through another life extension program just at the very start of that process to allow for services to continue while the new replacements for the XPTs and the Explorers are brought online. So they've had various colour schemes during the time. This is the original colour scheme. And then later on, they went to a couple of different livery changes with the rebranding of and renaming of the organisations that the XPT was being operated by. Some power cars have also received one-off colour schemes as well for various reasons over time. So that's a very brief summary of the XPTs. So today, there's 3 trains a day in each direction on the north coast. The early morning or the day train between Sydney and Casino. The middle of the day, the Grafton XPT to and from Grafton, and then the Brisbane XPT, which is overnight to Brisbane and a day train back to Sydney. The day Casino train forms an overnight train back to Sydney. On the west, we have the Central West XPT running between Sydney and Dubbo and back, and it does the trip in one day there and back, and that's on a self-contained roster. Whereas the North trains link up operationally with the South trains in their roster with an overnight train and a day train between Sydney and Melbourne and back. So while they're starting to show their age, they've had a lot more running than was originally planned. They're still going strong. There's a McDonald's there in the middle of nowhere, a True Value hardware store. So here's our train at the platform. Let's actually, if we can, explore the platform a little bit. We mostly fit. Actually, we will move up a tad. One of the things about the XPTs at some of these smaller country stations is that they don't fully fit onto the platform. So what can happen, sometimes they'll make 2 stops and then other times they'll just make 1 stop. So we should actually go down while we're here. Let's explore this station. Okay, so this is Lambley Station. Okay, this is interesting. So these are being put together willy-nilly. And it doesn't even make, it sort of makes sense, but not for where it should be. So these are obviously the indicators from Barrera, for one train going via the North Shore, one going via the main north. But totally out of character for where we are. It's interesting to find out. It's the first time I've actually had a chance to look at the indicator. Ladies' room. So we've actually got most of the train on the platform. So we're just repositioning our camera. I don't think where the station sign was. Alright, let's make our train depart. So compared to the last episode, we're running in the opposite direction. But I thought, considering that we finished in Donnybrook, and there's a lot of stations between Donnybrook and where we started the series, I thought this would be a more obvious fit. I'm actually surprised there hasn't been um, payware versions of the XPT compared to some of the other like freight locos that are out there. But I'm rather happy with the way that the train looks. It looks authentic for the period that it's set on. You know, there's no real glaring errors. But it's a nice looking unit. I know with other train simulators that I've used, Train Sim World and also Train Simulator Classic, if people have wanted an XPT in their game, they've had to basically just try and do an XPT skin on a HST body. But this actually looks like what an Australian XPT looks like, including the carriages. Now the Australian carriages, as we see here, have the fluting down the side, so to speak, rather than just the rigid sides that the HST in England has. But yeah, this is cool. Oh, there's the fire engines and the fire that we saw on the last episode. Okay, so this is Haley River. They've put us into the loop. We'll just go in cab. They've put us into the... Oh, this is probably the main line. So we're back in semaphore country. So we can go up a little bit more now. I'll speed them at 65. I wasn't watching the speed. Right, it's supposed to be doing 65, not 85. Now it's just interesting watching the train pass through the countryside here and seeing on the side of the train Intercity XPT. So the definitions of what's intercity have changed over time. In the early 1980s, when these trains were introduced, they decided they made they branded the XPTs as the Intercity XPT. Oh, there's a station. We will actually stop the train and go back to that station. Now, in the rural world, I'd have to change ends and I'd have to drive back. So this is very, very differently based on the HST cab. In Australia, we don't have the sunflower, for instance, on the dash on the top left. All right, let's go and have a look on the platform. So this station is called Northcliffe. Okay. Looks like every man and his dog. Hang on. Looks like every man and his dog are here in Northcliffe to see the XPT. Hello, doggy. Oh, it's even making doggy noises. Hello, doggy. And as we can see, not all of the trains on the platform anyway. Bye, doggy. So as I was saying, when the XPTs were introduced, their services were promoted as the intercity XPT. So places such as Sydney to Tamworth was seen as an intercity service. Sydney to Dubbo, Sydney to Canberra, Sydney to Albury, etc. They were considered as the intercity services. In 2025, those same services are now called regional services. In 2025, an intercity service is somewhere between, say, for instance, Sydney to Newcastle, Sydney to Lithgow, Sydney to Wollongong on the south coast. Whereas when the XPT was introduced, those services were referred to as interurban. So there's a big difference between the current branding of regional and intercity compared to back then. Some people outside the industry still refer to intercity trains as regional trains and that sort of stuff. So sometimes context is a bit important as well. But you could also say that they're regional and interstate because they do go to Victoria and also Queensland. Unfortunately, on the XPTs currently operated by New South Wales Trainlink, there is no external branding for the train, and that hasn't been the case. Oh, I'm in a 50 zone now. And that hasn't been the case since New South Wales Trainlink came into being. Which is a wasted opportunity. There's a lot of blank space on the power cars of the XPTs these days compared to how they are now. So one note about the power cars at either end. They're officially known as XP class power cars, with XP 2000 being the first one. There were some later carriages built and more power cars built when the services got extended and sleeping cars were added, with one sleeping car on North. Oh, there's a platform. Now, of course, we're not playing this to be 100% prototype, so to speak. We might just go in cab for the moment. Now this one's interesting. We'll go out and we'll have a walk here. This one's called Korea Bay, and it's the City Rail style way out signs and station signs for what is very much a regional area. So this is interesting. That's an old CountryLink style seat in the CountryLink colours. Although then again, City Rail also did that at the time. So a lot of the station signage here was from the City Rail era. It's rather than being the State Rail Authority when the XPTs first came out. Two organisations were split into City Rail and CountryLink on the passenger side, and freight services were privatised eventually. So we've got some heritage signage there, like Station Master. Some of these platforms had signal boxes on the platform. So this one's a longer platform. Notice the City Rail signage here. Tactile tiles, that sort of thing. Alright, let's go again. We do have the signal at the end of the platform. Behind the yellow line, it's not there for decoration. Alright, let's get the XPT moving. Now, of course, I don't have all these advantages when actually driving a train, so it is nice to be able to see the trains in these surroundings. Oh, here we go. Airline side camera has been reactivated. Oh no, we should be doing 25. Not 51. Now, of course, if I was just sitting in the driver's cab looking at the whole window, the front window the whole time, of course I wouldn't be driving like this. And if I knew where I was going, I also wouldn't be driving like this, but it's part entertainment as well. A winner loop, this is why it's only 25. Oh, it says there I passed the signal at danger. Now, of course, in the real world I wouldn't have done it. In the real world I would also be stopped by now. Now, we did this in one of our earlier episodes when we were actually in England. And that's because... And what the result there was, rather, was that there was actually another train ahead. So we'll drive in the cab for a while. Now, the engine noise seems a little off to me. It doesn't seem like an XPT engine. It seems like another type of engine. And I can't change the engine type, the engine noise. Now, in the train control or signalling area, depending on where you are, when I went past that signal of danger, there'd be alarms, and I would have been told to stop well and truly by now. So I could actually be on, and this is the thing with this train being added as an extra. Well, there's a stop signal for that track. It's not for this track. Maybe I should be on that track. Now, if there are changes to the safe working because of, you know, things like signal phase and that sort of stuff, there are procedures in place. Just because the signals that stop doesn't necessarily mean that you're stuck behind it all day just because it's not working. That's a different scenario to this scenario where, because I was providing entertainment, I didn't see the signal. And because we're an extra train, I'm not sure that the signals are automatically set for us in some cases. So I got a feeling that I should be on that track on the left-hand side. Now, according to the mud map down the bottom, the heads-up display, we are coming up to a red signal. Now, I don't know if there's any points there that can get me back onto the track that I think I should be on. We're coming up to the main station, Karama, that we've seen a lot of in the early episodes of this series. Now, I believe you can set it in Trainz, say if you have a signal past a danger, you can get penalised and it's pretty much game over. In other train simulators that I've used, Train Sim World and Train Sim Classic, that's definitely the case. Yeah, so I presume that I'm actually on the wrong track. So we'll come up to this shunting signal. Oh, they've actually given us this signal to go back onto the correct line. Now, I didn't change the points. Maybe I should have. So in this area, we'd be under the instruction of the signal or the area controller or the train controller, call them what you will. Anyway. Didn't want to be over there. Hang on, where's my train? We're downtown, that's where we are. Oh, there's the station. Whoops. So we need to be over... No. Gee, any problem with the free roam camera? Okay, the points are set in the correct position, I'm hoping. We're going cab. So we'll just take it to the platform. Now on a main line in normal circumstances, it wouldn't be up to me to set the points anyway. So yard working, maximum speed of 25 kilometres an hour at the moment. All right, we'll stop the train there. Pardon me. So let's explore the station a little bit before we go. All right, let's go for a walk. So as I've mentioned earlier on another episode, this very much reminds me of Moss Vale in the New South Wales Southern Highlands, where you got the platform a little bit apart, and then you got like a parking area in the middle. Very old historic station. So what we'll do, we'll step out of that. There's our train, our XPT. What we're going to do now is we've gone to this end. And I want to set CA 20 points. And it's very hard to do from here. Didn't want to do that. Interesting to see a City Rail era station entrance sign and a bin. So what I want to do, now I shouldn't have to do this, and in the real world I wouldn't have to do this. So I don't want the signal to go back onto the main line, but I do want to change these points that are coming up here. So I want to change these points. So those points are changed. Now we're coming into the yard. And we need to change these points because there's already locos on that road. So the points are set. We can go back to the train. We've now got a shunting indication. Now, normally those points, of course, would be electronically controlled. And if I set this up properly, it may do this automatically, but I haven't set it up to do it, so... So we're going to go into a yard, so it's very... Now, in some areas on the New South Wales network, you do have lock-up little compounds like this. The most notable ones that I can think of immediately are the ones at Moree and Armidale for the Explorer trains to be stored overnight. It's a similar sort of concept. All right, let's have a look outside. Oh, we're just not long enough. Oh, sorry, the siding's not quite long enough for us to fit. It's a good place to end. It's a good as enough, good as place as any to end. We don't really have. Can we clear the signal? Can we go behind the signal brief? Oops. That will do us there. I have been Simulator Eric. You have been wonderful. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you next time. Stay safe out there. Ta-ta and farewell.